VPN at technophilespodcast.com. I'm David Geisler, and this is the Technophiles Podcast.
What IBM is kind of hoping is that a lot of this deep data mining and just throwing tons of algorithms at something, this becomes a lot more accessible if you have a quantum core.
This week, the cast gets together to talk about IBM's quantum computer, Google's DeepMind, and a real-life Resident Evil. It's time to rotate your qubit vector because this is the Technophiles 296th episode. Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's show. I am here with the regular cast, Vee Laabs, Krista-Lee Malone, and Jake Gill. Vee, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
You were just in the pre-show here telling us a crazy story about your bus adventures while you came over here to the studio.
There was some vicious man-spreading happening.
That sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
You had someone sitting next to you on the bus that was taking up all the space, apparently.
So much space. It's a 2-seat thing, and he's like, I need like 1.5 of these
One
things.
and a half of the seats.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Granted, I do fit on like half a seat, but I'd like to not.
Open seats?
There were other seats. He could have stood. Like he decided to sit next to me.
You were window seat?
I was window seat, so I was trapped.
Yeah, I mean, can you
exactly
deny the guy though? He just wanted to check out those sweet.
He wanted to check out your amazing Star Wars tights here.
Tights.
Wait, I don't mind if you try to show the camera. That is fine. Vee, we're recording on May 4th right now.
Yeah.
We have a couple of different Star Wars shout outs going on right now. Jake, you have a nice Star Wars shirt going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an homage too, but I'm trying to stop the wars. I don't want them to happen in space, on the ground, anywhere. Let's just end them.
Space is for sex.
All right, very good. Krista-Lee, how are you doing? Doctor Who. This is you're crossing enemy lines here a little bit.
She missed the memo.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's like use the Force, Harry, Gandalf. Right?
Doctor Who is always in season.
How do you feel about the new companion?
I'm excited for that.
It will depend on when I see her
depends if she's cool or not. That's
Yeah.
my Krista-Lee voice. That's you right now.
I look forward to new
No,
stuff in Doctor Who.
yeah.
But, like I don't watch it, so I'm happy on behalf of y'all.
I'm sure the new companion will be just fine. I've liked
Is
all
it going to be a
the
male
shows.
companion and a
No, it's a
female
gal.
doctor?
No, it's not.
Not
It's
yet.
a black girl.
Give
Not
him
yet.
another couple of years probably, huh?
But I'm not going to like judge based on the 2 pictures I saw. I'll wait until I see an episode and then.
Fair enough. She seems
like
cool.
her.
Kind of
And then the
throwback.
judgment begins.
There's a bit of a
Yes.
retro element to her vibe, if I
Yeah.
may. There's a little bit of that classic Doctor Who feel to her.
Mm-hmm.
She's a little. She's not quite as saucy as was it Claire, the most recent one?
I think.
No,
I lost track a little bit.
Clara.
I did too.
Clara.
Yeah.
That's right. Guys, let's talk about what we're talking about tonight. But
Yeah.
I'm so happy you're all here.
Schrodinger.
Schrodinger here too. Krista-Lee is Facebook Live right now, I think. Isn't that right?
We're ending it on Schrodinger.
And in it on Schrodinger. All right, guys, we have some really interesting
Or did we?
topics tonight. Jake, you brought a story about what was that?
Sorry, I was making a
He's
bad
invoking a
Schrodinger's
Schrodinger's
cat
cat.
joke.
Yeah. We either did or didn't end on him.
You
Well,
never know
we'll never
until
know.
you
See it.
end.
I don't.
I don't
No,
know.
wait, you don't
No,
know
you just
until
never
you-
know. Right?
Until you watch the
until
video.
you sure, right.
Yeah.
So this doesn't really work.
Maybe after
Anyways,
the video,
well
you don't know
Anyways,
if he's
whatever.
still there.
Speaking of quantum entanglement,
Yeah, hey,
quantum mechanics,
whoa.
Jake, you've got a quantum story for us
Hey.
tonight.
That's what we call a transition.
That was brilliant. Secretly brilliant there,
Hey.
Jake
Secretly
Gill.
brilliant.
Let's talk about everything we're talking about, but real
yeah.
quick, Jake, what the heck is this?
So we're talking
seems
about-
awesome.
Yeah, we're talking about IBM. We're talking about quantum computing. IBM, they're working on a lot of different stuff. They're working on Watson. They're working on some very, very, very high-tech stuff.
Yeah.
And so we got an announcement that they're going to bring this to the cloud. They are going to work on making this more public and more accessible.
Quantum
so we'll talk about that.
Computing has been making leaps and bounds over the past couple of years. I know like 4 or 5 years ago, they got like 1 byte to live for 10 seconds or whatever it was, 1 kabillion jillion bytes. And then I know a couple years ago, they got them to live for a couple seconds and then now hours. And now it's getting even past that to the point where some serious stuff can actually happen. But it still takes like an entire factory, like literally an entire factory to keep 1 square inch of like super cooled area to keep the quantum stuff happening.
Yeah.
And so obviously, actually, it's a little bit of a throwback to like just in the pre-show, you had a picture about a huge box getting unloaded off an airplane. And it was a 5 megabyte hard drive.
Yep.
Which is funny, back in the 60s, it was the size of half a truck. I actually see some parallels here with quantum computing right now is the size of an entire factory to get one little piece going.
Right.
So we're not going to be building factories for every single person to use. So IBM is thinking, it would seem to me, let's let's cloud it out.
Yep. Exactly.
Super cool. We'll
We'll talk
about
more.
that.
Yep.
We're going to talk about that first, but before that, in part 2, what do you think, girls? What should we do first, Google or zombies?
Let's do Google first.
Google?
Yeah.
We'll save zombies to part 3.
That makes sense because like that's the healthcare, and then when the healthcare fails, we end with zombies.
Cool. Vee, you brought a
Yeah.
story
Zombies.
about Google's DeepMind. What's that all about?
Yeah, DeepMind just got access to approximately a lot of medical records from the NHS.
1.6 billion,
yeah.
according to your notes here.
hmm Yeah, they're going to be performing some experiments with DeepMind using their artificial intelligence to solve some problems. And people are a little peeved about that, naturally.
Ooh, peeved. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I guess so. A little bit.
Until
I can see
Google
that.
cures cancer, and then
Yeah,
guess
and
what?
then,
Everyone
and
will
then they'll
happy.
be sorry.
Pretty much.
My bad.
Yeah.
We'll
Oops,
talk about
you were
that in
right.
part 2. After that, we'll take a break and come back in part 3. And Krista-Lee, we're going to talk about real-life zombies.
Pretty much.
Care to set that up a little bit more?
Sorry, I was just
Deadpan,
thinking.
like cut.
Yeah.
Zombies
Yeah.
are so good. Do I need to say anything else?
Well, real-life zombies, though. There's so many different ways to interpret that.
Right. No. So this is an actual study that has been approved. In
Great.
order
Okay, so we're going to continue on with the episode. Sorry.
reanimate dead brains.
Yeah, what a group of people are trying to actually try to
Yeah.
get it going, huh?
Yeah, this is an actual thing. They have the participants.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's the
didn't
researchers staying
complain.
brains and not the
They're
other way
like,
around, not the
Yeah.
zombies.
They're like,
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
electrocuting frog legs 10 years ago. Now let's do it to the brains, and we're going to be good to go.
Pretty much. Actually, yeah, that
Mhm.
sounds about right. There's some cells in there. I don't want to give it all away right now, but
Part
yeah,
3.
this is
Stay
zombies.
tuned, people.
Part 3. Can't wait to talk about that. That's going to be fun. Yeah, it'll be fun to talk about.
It'll be.
Jake, IBM, cloud computing.
Yeah.
Lay down
that's
that
it.
sweet knowledge.
Boom. Here it is.
Yeah, that's
Done.
a
All right.
Well,
Okay,
okay.
we'll be
So
back in part 2.
I-
This is like a weird episode tonight.
Admittedly here, I don't know very much about quantum
Dude,
computing.
quantum computing is kind of above everybody's
So-
level.
and I was-
It's okay.
Well, and I was watching a YouTube video about IBM. IBM was introducing these things, and they're talking about, hey, data storage and research and all these things are really important. And even the researchers in there are kind of like, look, every time we run calculations, every time we do anything, it's kind of we're going into the unknown. We don't even know if we're going to be able to replicate some of these things again once they
Right.
happen. So, but anyways, as we were kind of saying before we started part 1 officially here,
Yeah.
is IBM, they recognize a need for, things are progressing in cloud computing, in quantum computing, all these different things. We're getting more and more technology. We're investing more funding into it, but it's really inaccessible. And that's the largest kind of hindrance, I think, right now to almost like public awareness. I think that you could probably have a conversation with a lot of people out there and you would say quantum computing and they would just be like, wait, what? Like, what are you even talking about?
Mhm.
And so IBM is hoping that by releasing some of these things, by releasing this, what is it, 5 qubit quantum computer?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know what that even really means, but it's
We've
a
talked about
large
qubits
number.
a few times on the show, and
Yeah.
it's always kind of like you kind of get it.
Yeah. So they're going to make this cloud accessible. Now, it doesn't mean that you can just hop online and just kind of like run an experiment. You would have to still go through a interface that they're building and they're doing some tests on. But essentially, you would add yourself to a queue because this is a massive computer and the experiments take a while to run.
That's not to be confused with qubit. The Q is different.
Correct. But you will.
Glad I laid that down there.
That was,
Sorry.
yeah,
Maybe that was obvious.
Horrible. Yeah, but the Q, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I wasn't trying to be clever. I genuinely was like, oh, I should point this out. And then I was like, well, maybe that's probably pretty
That
clear.
just sounded really
Yeah.
clever.
Yeah, so
What
you'll
was
be
I
added to a
saying?
queue
Yes.
to be part of the cloud. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
and then
So sorry.
once the data gets processed, then you get an email with the results, and this can be shared. But they want people to have access, so it's kind of like like a radio telescope or something, where you can only point it at a certain point of the sky. Like there are only so many telescopes, so you need to divvy up the time. So basically, you could submit your request to IBM and be like, "Hey, I want to use this to run this thing," and then they're like, "Sure, we'll add it into the queue." And then once it's done, you get your email. So the big kind of cool thing about this is, so this facility that has this computer is in New York. And before to access this, you needed to be a part of a probably incredibly prestigious research university, or be one of these, I think they call them like blue chip creators. So
Yeah, we've talked about that too. I mean, this sounds familiar. I should say.
can you fill us in
No, I
on
can't
Blue
even
Chip?
remember.
You cannot.
No,
Okay.
no, I just remember someone else saying it on the show. One
Okay.
other time.
All right.
Even Tony, I don't know.
I mean, so maybe that's where they're trying to store some of this information because, like you were saying, like we don't hold on to this data for very long, and so they're trying to get better and better ways to store this information and data. But if it just requires a lot of money and resources to do this kind of research. So that's a huge limiting factor. And obviously, if you're not even able to like dabble into what quantum computing is, then how are you ever going to be interested in it or have awareness?
Yeah, that's
So
true.
they're like, hey, we're going to bring this to the cloud. And they hope that
That's cool.
these initial tests will be very promising. And then they can kind of ramp up how much public access people get. And yeah, just make leaps and bounds, So very exciting stuff.
In New York, that is surprising to me.
Yeah, it's in let me pull up.
There's some
article
if
that
I'm-
I was-
I could be incorrect, but there was some big lab working on quantum computing, I think in Texas. A few years back they had a
Let
lot
me
going on, but New
see.
York is
Yeah, you don't really hear a whole lot coming out of New York in terms of like
Stuff like this.
big tech.
No,
Right.
but unless it's at like a hang on.
At a
It's in
university or
here.
something.
Yeah.
maybe the physical computers somewhere else in the nation, but this organization is in New
It could be.
York.
Oh, that's
would
entirely
kinda
possible.
make sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. We're just
That
nitpicking.
article that I had
Yeah.
pulled up is now not loading. So.
Excellent.
Oh, great.
Well, I'll just send an email to the quantum computer real quick.
Yeah. So like I'm trying to figure out in my head like what kind of experiments happen here. Like what are you doing?
So, I
With
mean,
the
quantum
quantum
computing at its
computing.
core, what it can compute things. What is it? It's like it's millions and billions of times. It can do more calculations than a regular processor. Here's the thing: we've talked about this a few times in this show, and I've learned like don't dig in too deep. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
always come out sounding like an idiot when you talk about quantum computing.
Yeah.
So you can only try, but at its base, the way it works is that it's all about atoms spinning. So like a 1 or a 0, a thing exists or it doesn't. But with quantum computing, they can get the atoms to be spinning, and they can actually subatomically, or they can be spinning in more than one direction, or it's like they.
Hey, David.
Yeah?
Would you like Wikipedia to help you?
Oh, do you have it up?
I do.
Well, let me see how close I can get here, because
All right.
I'm honestly,
We'll fact
it's
check.
fine. But a lot of it has to do with instead of just something being there or not, there
Mhm.
can be a gradient of states of that thing.
Oh, okay.
And so now where you used to have one bit of computation, you
Yeah.
can now have thousands, if not millions, in that same physical space.
So it's
cool.
very fast.
So
Yeah.
it's a different level.
Mhm.
It's a completely
Wow.
different level of
So-
computing.
I think the desire from like the public or what IBM is kind of hoping is that a lot of this like deep mining, deep data mining, and like just throwing tons of algorithms at something and just being
Mhm.
like, well, let's just crunch numbers for a long time and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
This becomes a lot more accessible if you have a quantum core.
I mean,
Oh,
things
okay.
that can take years can take seconds, stuff like that.
Yep.
Mhm.
At its base. Krista-Lee, so did you have a little something up there?
Well, a little bit.
It's
because
okay if we pull from Wikipedia. I don't mind.
Because I looked up qubit real quick, but this will actually, I think, help with the explanation you
Yeah,
were
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to talk about. Because the qubit, which is just one quantum bit, this is the analog of a bit. The thing with this is that it can be essentially both the 1 and the 0 at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what's making the difference in the speed and the power and everything else. It's probably also why it takes a factory to cool it, because that's obviously
Well, they have to
Very
they have to get it
intense.
down to like negative. It's like negative
It's-
700
it's-
Celsius. It's some crazy. It's like
the
one of the
system,
coldest.
yeah, it's colder than space.
Right.
Oh.
because think about it, things don't you normally do not see things that are two things at once, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a very I'm trying not to use
It's
the
like
word
a occurring-
unnatural, because none of this is natural. It's obviously all man-made.
Well,
but-
technically, all of it's very much natural.
It's
We don't
very
under-
it's
It's
Is
so
it just
natural
like-
we don't
it's-
understand
right.
it all yet.
It's operating at a natural
there you
level.
go.
And
Might
so
That we
we as
can't
humans, like we can't do that yet.
grasp
Computers
it.
can't do that yet.
Yeah.
And so they were talking about one of the things they mentioned, and I thought was a great explanation of like the data and like what happens. It is one of the researchers said it's like trying to balance an egg on a pencil.
Maybe.
Like just getting data from this, and they're like, it's really like you can get it for a little while, but eventually it will fall.
Yeah.
And so
right.
what they need to figure out now, the
That's
biggest
good.
thing is figuring out how can we grab and store that information before it disappears entirely.
Oh.
So wait, Krista-Lee, so what do they say about a qubit there? It's the quantum
Oh.
bit. Oh, just that it can be the 1 and the 0 at the same time, right? Yeah, right. It could be
So
in
if it's
different
5
states.
qubit,
There's multiple states it can be.
Well,
at
then
the
what
same
it is
time.
too, then you can get into all the multiplications of if you have like 4 of those and they're existing and not existing.
there's like a huge amount of
That
possibilities
multiplication
there.
ramps up
Yeah.
very fast. Is
That's
the
huge.
basics.
By the way, guys, the computer that IBM is offering up for public use will be at a research facility in Yorktown Heights, New York.
Huh.
And it will be, you can obtain access via the internet using a software interface that they're doing.
Fascinating.
So
That's great. You don't
Oh.
happen to have that information yet at all, do you? Like, who? Anyone can send an email, or is there still some
IBM,
kind of
no, it says
clearance?
that, and there's a hyperlink here. I didn't click it, but
Sure.
IBM is instituting a schedule system.
Wow.
So you systematically, you sign up and then test and sequence.
Sign up to be part of the.
Yep.
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 Got it.
So you got to get on there. You probably, and like you do have to have some degree of knowledge of like what you're trying to test here. But, considering that before it was probably a few PhDs and
Right.
a very small core of research, like builders, engineers that were working on these things. This is certainly opening up a lot of access. So
I'm trying to visualize like what does this rig look like?
it looks
Like,
really
what does
weird.
like a quantum computer
Yeah.
look like? If visualize the bits that I've seen of companies that have been working on this, and some of this data is even a year or two old. You know what I mean? But you'll see like a Nova episode, or you'll catch something online
Yeah.
where they'll talk about these things. At the end of the day, it's almost like an entire factory going down to just a few inches. It's just like, it looks like it's out of like a comic book movie.
Yeah.
Just like things and poking and holding
Yeah.
things.
So V, here it is coming
We have
down
a video right here.
Oh,
What is
that's
this
a
video
flower.
that we're looking at right now?
That's-
This is
a
from
branch.
this is a YouTube video from IBM talking about the product, so
All right.
we can link it.
We can
Oh,
link
yeah,
to
no,
it
this
in
thing-
the show.
It looks
it's
like
like-
a crazy laser
Yeah.
in like the
Yeah.
Hadron Collider.
Yep.
A little bit. It's one of those kind of
Alright.
things.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's super
oh.
wild looking and giant.
It looks very, very futuristic, like straight out of like a cool, edgy sci-fi movie.
Mhm.
That's not super clean yet. We're not in the super clean future. It's just we figured this out.
The gritty
Let's do
future.
its future.
I'm guessing this is the factory picture there.
Ah, I see.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Really good for the 95% of our audio listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
They're
guys.
loving this part.
It's
All right,
amazing.
come on. I
It's
did
more-
a simple
I
Google
love it. I love
image
it. It's great.
search.
I'm not giving you a hard time. I'm
Go
just
do it on
commenting.
your own. No, I'm giving the listeners a hard time.
It's more
Oh, I see.
Pacific
Oh, I
Rim
see.
Go
Minority
Google image
Report.
search quantum computer. There's some cool
Fair
stuff
enough.
there.
Yeah.
And then we can all partake in the pictures that are sitting in front of me.
Well, wait a moment. Type it in. Ooh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Oh, I like
Look
that
at
one
all
right
the
there.
yellow lights.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's so,
So-
cool.
I think this is really interesting way that this is happening, because think about it, with the lack of networking access essentially back in the day when we had the truck 5 megabyte
5 megabytes.
5 megabyte hard drive, that was not something that could be shared logistically. That was never going to happen.
Yep.
Right. But because we have these other things, we have the internet, we have networking and whatnot, the idea that something could be shared,
Right.
I wonder how that's going to affect the speed of it,
Progressing.
not getting smaller.
So you're
is what I'm saying.
So
Like,
what you're
yes,
kind of saying is like
progressing.
back in the 60s, so this is all part of the pre-show. Jake had a photo of a huge hard drive. I think I kind of set this up.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
like a famous photo.
I tweeted it. Maybe
tweeted
Technophiles can retweet it
Yeah.
later.
There
and-
it is.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll tweet it when this
Yep.
episode
Yep.
posts. However, back then in the 60s, this humongous 5 megabyte hard drive, the only goal was how can we make this so small so everyone can have one? And 20 years from now, we'll make it smaller so everyone can have one. 10 years from now.
Mhm.
And I think you're absolutely right, Krista-Lee. I think the goal here is not how can we make quantum computers so small and cheap that everyone can have one. I don't think it has to be. I think you're absolutely right. It's really just how can people have access to it?
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I was thinking kind of down both directions. I was more asking like how that effect would, what kind of effect that would have, right? Because this could go a couple of different ways. One being, it doesn't have to be small. Not everybody needs one, because we can just have cloud access and it'll get better and better. But then the cloud access just gets better and better. Or alternatively, with the old tech before networking, you couldn't have all those brains coming together to work on it. Is
Mhm.
this actually going to wind up in everyone's iPhone 20 years from now because of the cloud access, giving more people access to play with this and then develop whatever is needed to bring it down?
I mean, just think about it this way: what kind of technology would we have access to if we could put a quantum computer in a
And
phone?
Here's what I'm thinking too. Think of the game Folded. That was the protein folding game, for those of you who don't know, where they figured out certain problems in medical
like
science.
DNA binding or
right.
RNA binding.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit
like
about it
yeah.
on was it our third live episode with Stuart Malthrop, I think?
I think we did.
Yeah.
I think it
Right.
was
So that happened, and they solved certain problems because they had thousands of minds all working on it,
crowdsourced.
right? So here's what I'm thinking: by putting this out to the public, they are crowdsourcing where quantum computing could go.
Yep.
This might wind up in our iPhone faster than the original iPhone was developed.
Okay, I don't want to give you a hard time here, but when you say this will end up, are you talking about, like, for example, like Siri and Google now, all that computation happens on servers, in California.
I mean, a quantum chip.
So like a local drive that is a quantum drive in our phone, is that what you're talking
Sure.
about?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about the experience of using quantum computing via cloud, which is really more where I feel
Could
like
be
IBM's
both.
going? Is that what you're talking about?
But
I'm just a little confused.
No, see, I actually think both will happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll just be
I think obviously the cloud one
the cloud
before,
first,
Right.
and that will become more and more
I suppose it's a matter of
accessible
time.
until right, and
before
then
the technology physically gets smaller.
right. But what I'm saying is, I
I see
think
where you're
that
going with
that
this.
whole process will actually go faster because we're going through the cloud
Maybe.
to basically
Oh, yeah,
crowdsource.
absolutely.
Because there's more momentum,
Right.
There's
which is
more
kind of what you were
momentum.
touching on in the beginning.
And
Mhm.
there's just more brains that are going to have access to work on the
Sure,
problem.
fair enough.
Well, and IBM is not the only company to be doing this. I mean,
Right.
like Amazon is a prime example right now where they basically they're trying to build their own AI system.
Mhm.
Sorry, Amazon Prime example. Come on.
Did I
was
seriously
the
just
only
say
one
that?
Who, yes.
Are you like, is Amazon working on
That
an
was
Allspark?
such
Is
a
that what's
money
going
joke
on?
that I didn't even know that I
like
delivered
Amazon
that
Prime,
one.
like the paid service.
Amazon is a prime example. Amazon Prime.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I'm
I
just-
thought you were making a Transformers joke.
No.
Ooh, Optimus Prime though.
Right, I was like,
Oh.
Amazon
Yeah.
Prime, he needs an Allspark, that's his quantum computer. It doesn't matter, let's keep going.
wow.
All right.
That's okay. Elon
We're-
Optimus is going to just start tweeting.
Elon
out.
Optimus
I
is
know.
all about
That.
this.
Yeah.
There's so many
This is
things.
cool,
Okay.
though. I feel like we should go to part 2 here, but Jake, do you have any...
No, I just want to finish my thought there
Yeah.
because my bad joke that I didn't mean to say derailed things.
Amazon Prime is working
Amazon
on their own AI.
Prime. Okay, no, Amazon, not Prime.
Got it.
They are working on. They have an AI,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
They open their API to like everybody. They're like, hey devs, here's what we've got. Make it better.
Mhm.
And they just gave access. And so by doing that, they're hoping that people that are interested in AI and building their own Jeeves and all these different things, right? Or it's going to speed the process up. People are going to delve into things. They're going to have their passion projects, and then they're going to share them with other people who can take that passion project, spin off on it, and make something new. And I think IBM is kind of going the same way. They're
Yeah.
like, we have no idea what researchers are going to come up with, but we're going to find out if we actually give them access.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Amazon, just as a side note real quick, Amazon's kind of a weird company right now. And I guess in a good way, because their whole business strategy is about trying to build that all-inclusive vertical, everything you do is going to be through Amazon. But at the same time, like with the engine that we talked about half a year ago, that game engine that's like totally open source, this AI is totally open source. It's two very different balancing acts coming from this company. It's interesting. Like
Well,
we're
and
not seeing Apple do anything like that right now.
And that they have like giant Amazon Prime factories, and then they're like open boutique shops.
Yeah. I know. It's interesting.
It's like, okay, I mean, I guess once you kill all of the competition, you can do what you want.
Were you here for our bookstore episode, or was that actually still last season, I think? Maybe that was with Tony. I think it was
I
with
think
Tony
that
last
was with
season.
Tony.
Yeah, I wasn't here for that. But
Amazon releasing their own bookstores,
Yeah,
their own
yeah.
physical bookstores. They've gone full circle. Yes, of course.
So-
So IBM, cool. IBM cloud computing,
it's very exciting.
quantum cloud computing.
Yep.
Let's get out of here, and we'll be right back in part 2 talking all about DeepMind, Google's DeepMind.
Yep.
Which is something that we've talked a little bit about before. It's so
Yeah, it's
cool.
getting some cool
Pseudo
applications.
follow-up.
Yeah.
Great. Well, in the
DeepMind
meantime,
powered-
Jake,
sorry.
if I may, real quick, if people want to talk to you a little bit more about this, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Critical Owl.
Marvelous.
Mhm.
And we love when people tweet the show at Technophiles Pod, or find us on our website, technophilespodcast.com, or search us on Facebook, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher by searching Technophiles Podcast. You can find us there. Okay, guys, we'll see you in part 2. Just click on the next video that's going to show up probably right about here.
And
In
right
this
about
space.
now.
Boom.